Hi, everybody. My name is Myles, and I'm with Peak Performers. I'm a disability inclusion partner here at Peak Performers, and this is our third episode of My Disability Story. I am so excited to bring this story to you with Reesa. A lot of times people come to me and they express to me that it feels like I'm all alone with my particular disability. And the whole purpose of starting this particular venture is to tell you that you are not alone. There are other people out there that are like you that have experienced similar kinds of things, and you are not alone in those experiences. Furthermore, there are many people out there in the world that are successful with their disabilities or cognitive differences. Without any further ado, I'm actually so excited to bring Reesa onto the show. Reesa, welcome.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to being with you.
You are a person that brings so much energy to a conversation and so much positivity and optimism. It's such a breath of fresh air. And I'm excited to have you talking with me because I feel like so many of the people that I'm talking to are job seekers and they are feeling a little down in the dumps. You are a person that specifically focuses on helping people be better at public speaking. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
I have been training people in public speaking for like over 20 years. I'm now a TED Talk speaker. You know, when you see a TED Talk and you go, gosh, that person, not all of them, but the ones you like, that person caught my attention right away and they held my attention the whole time. How do you do that? Well, I'm a TED Talk trainer. I'm the one who teaches them how to do that. But the thing I want to talk today to you about that I think will be very helpful for people is what can someone do to stop their public speaking fear? Most of my clients who come to me now are people who have public speaking fear. They're like maybe between 25 and 35 years old, accomplished people who have turned down job offerings because it had public speaking in it. I mean, these are people who really, really, really suffer, not with small groups. Everyone seems to be able to talk to small groups and one-to-one, but it's the large groups. And I have ADHD myself. I also have a touch of dyslexia, but massive, 100% really, dyscalculia. I think that's the current way to pronounce it. And that is like when I was a kid, I couldn't tell time. I failed 8th grade math. Every time I have to make change at the supermarket, I'm anxious. So pretty much, I just thought I was stupid. Until I was like maybe 45, I happened to be talking to someone who is a therapist. She said, here, take this test. And I went, yes, 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 yes. She looked at me and she said, you have dyscalculia. I can't believe you've done as well as you have. And like most people with this, we're creative, we're clever, but I wasn't good at organizing. So for job searchers, and I have actually helped people in that world, the whole organization of did I call them back? Have to call them back? When did I call them back? All of that just made me crazy.
Dyscalculia, that was something that I honestly had not ever heard of before talking with you. I feel like most people are familiar with dyslexia, but let's dig into that a little bit more. So you have trouble reading numbers. Like, what is it like to experience the world through your eyes? Because I feel like there's a lot of things around us everywhere that rely so heavily on numbers.
You have noticed. So as far as the dyslexia goes, when I'm reading a book, trying to get some sort of a book, I read, if I'm reading an actual book or even a Kindle, I put a paper under it and I just look at every page so it just helps me keep my eye on that page. And that's about it for me. I didn't have the reversal. I don't have as much issues with that, but the numbers, I describe what dyscalculia is and by saying I have dyslexia, but with numbers. I don't know distance. I'm horrible. When GPS was invented, it changed my life. I used to drive places and leave, not only in time to leave, but half again the time because I knew I would be lost. When I have to copy a phone number, I look at the first 3 numbers and I say them out loud. I can't just look at the phone number and remember it. I have to look at the numbers, see, are there any double letters? Are there any numbers that are in order? Or maybe I'll just remember this. If I do 3, then I check, did I have it right? Did all 3 of them are right? And I do, can you imagine? And I do that for the next numbers and the next, until I finish. It takes like 20, 30 seconds to copy a phone number. I would say a good half of the people who come to me are say, and I have ADHD because I think that way whenever this is my second book. Both of them I wrote for my way of reading, which is I take a paragraph of information that is really killer, but I take the top line as the opener and the rest of it I pull in bullets. And if there's a subgroup, I might even pull it in bullets like that, because I can read like that. And even this book, which is a story of how someone got over public speaking, it's kind of like Who Moved My Cheese, or one of those books where you can follow him doing it. At the end of each chapter, I did my outline of the whole chapter, because some people like to learn from a story. A lot of people, like me, just say, oh God, don't make me read this story. Just give me the punchline. And so I did everything I could to accommodate my brain. And as a result, it's just really user-friendly.
There's a big debate that's happening within the disability community about talking about disability as a superpower. And I think that can be a little dangerous sometimes if we perceive disability strictly as a superpower. But I also think that it highlights a valuable insight in that a lot of times disabilities shape us and give us unique advantages in the world. So I was curious, having dyscalculia and ADHD and dyslexia and other neurodiversities, like how does that shape your brain, and how has that given you unique special powers in the world?
I'm quite creative. There's nothing more fun for me than sitting down and brainstorming on some question that people have, or their marketing, or their game plan, or what they want to do with their career, or how they're going to get that promotion, or how they're going to get the attention of the boss who is dumber than them. And just so it's all the strategy. And luckily, I was born to very extroverted people, so it was normal for me to get up in front of people. The first time I had to actually do that was in high school. So I said to my dad, I'm supposed to give this speech, and what do you do so that you're not afraid when you go up there? You tell yourself the value you have, or why, a reason why it's valuable for me to share with these people. And so it's not techniques, it's 1,000 techniques, but also it was that mental attitude that made the difference. And I was a big student leader in school and things like that.
You are a PhD. You've written a book, but you also noted some of the challenges that you had growing up, where you failed 8th grade. So talk to me about that journey, and what did you have to say to yourself to convince yourself that I am smart and I am capable?
It wasn't in school, I'll tell you that. I was very, very, very lucky in that in the summers, our parents sent us to boys camp and girls camp. Best thing that ever happened to me, because it encouraged the arts and creativity, and my natural leadership skills came out, and people appreciated my sense of humor, and I could organize things, and it gave me I could see myself achieving in certain ways, although as a kid I didn't think of it in those terms. And certainly the way that the awareness that permeates our society now, that even kids learn about attitude and choose your thoughts and all that stuff, not zero of that existed. It was more like, oh, I can't do math. I guess I'm just dumb in math. And so there was no guidance, nothing. Looking back, I see lots of talent and lots of creativity. And I'll tell you, I would say one of my best qualities is persistence. When I used to encourage people to find work that matches them, for job seekers, I suggest, people say, I'll take any job. And when I say that, I'll say, really? Are you willing to go through the management program at McDonald's? Is it any job? And they go, well, not that. I said, so it's not any job. So this is what I suggest to people. Look back at all the jobs you've ever had. List of all the jobs you've had. What were your favorite parts and your least favorite parts? So it's 2 columns, my favorite parts of that job and least favorite. And you'll start to see a pattern. There's certain things that you like the most. I say choose the top 3 things that you're skilled at, but also you like to do. And you're more likely to find work that matches that, because you say, well, I'm looking for something, in the marketing or accounting or whatever you're in, that has these 3 things. Anything come to mind? And then watch me. Zip your mouth and don't talk. Let them go, well, oh, it's interesting. I never thought, well, let me see. What would that? Because there are jobs that have been invented in the last few years that you don't know about. I used to talk to every person I ever met and say, can I visit you at your job? And I would visit, and so I know about a lot of things, but that's using your creativity and your skill and your persistence. And I can tell you that every time I went on one of these informational interviews to say, hey, so and so suggested that I meet with you. I'm not asking you for a job. That's very important to say. And then say, what are your favorite parts of the job? What are your least favorite? And I would say if you can go on informational interviews to see what's out there in the field that you're interested in, that's a good way to practice your interviewing skills, and also sometimes you uncover an opening.
Informational interviews can be a very powerful tool at opening the door. I like to recommend to people never underestimate the value of lateral connections. So often I encounter job seekers and like, take me to the boss. And that's kind of like walking into the middle of a retail store and going, I insist on speaking with the manager right now. And you can see why that might be perceived poorly. Whereas a lot of times if you work at a lateral level and work your way in through lateral connections, those are the folks that you'll be working with every day anyway. So you want to know that you like working with them. But a lot of times I tell people that people want to be helpful. They want to help you find something. And if you can find those allies, they can look for jobs within that company or within other companies too. And the very first thing that happens within most companies is when we have a new opening, we turn to the person on our left, on the right, and we go, well, who do you know that would be perfect for this role?
So let me actually talk about public speaking, both for job search and for everyone who's listening, because that's the big thing. And the big thing is this: before you show up to a meeting or to an interview, you think, who's going to be there? Okay, it's the accounting guy and then the marketing guy, those two guys. All right, accounting and marketing in one meeting. Lucky you. But what I'll do is I'll think, why am I meeting with them? When I'm finished, what is it I want them to know or to do? So I first start with, who am I talking to and what is it I want them to know? And then I think of, what could I say to the marketing guy that would make him want to do this thing I want him to do? What could I say to the accounting guy that would motivate him in his own mind to do what I want? So I'm not writing the talk based on why I think it's a good idea, because I have other ideas. I just want to get their brain to accept my ideas. So I write, well, what would be 3 points? Because most people think in threes. What would be 3 main points that I could make? And then I would hit the bullets under those for both the marketing and the accounting person. But I already know how I'm going to end, because I wrote that in the beginning. I wrote, who am I talking to? When I'm finished, what is it I want them to do? Before you go into a meeting, if it's in person or virtually, you got to think ahead and plan. When you see people who do well, it's not because they're like making it up. These people have thought ahead of, who am I talking to? What am I talking to? Well, I think I'm going to be saying this. And they have little notes. And on Zoom, I stick this next to the camera. And if I'm in person, I'll print out my PowerPoints, but I have notes. And this way, when I speak, I know what I'm going to say next. I don't have to I absolutely suggest not memorizing. And instead, be ready to speak at a regular meeting. And for jobs, everyone get a friend and start practicing your 30-second interview. Let me look at the job description. What do they care about? Because I have a lot of things I care about. Irrelevant. What do they care about? And what do I see repeating? And I'm going to hit the big one first, and the second one second, and the third. I might even leave out really cool stuff that I've done. But I want the first impression of them when they say, tell me about you. And part of that 30-second introduction is going to say how I've done the 3 things that they care about the most. And from that, then they ask questions. But here's the other thing about job search is think, what questions will I ask? And then rehearse the answers aloud.
I have heard before that women are underdiagnosed with many different neurological conditions. And I think that it's important to point out, too, that the whole field of study for neurodiversity is relatively new, and we didn't have names for many of these things before. So could you talk a little bit more about the experience specifically as a woman being diagnosed later in life, what that's like, and then what you would say to other women out there?
I will tell you that it was extremely happy and joyous and fabulous when I was told, oh, your brain just works. Your brain doesn't have that part, apparently, or I don't know what it is about us. But when I was told, oh, this is something you have, it was like a burden of guilt and shame was lifted because, oh, it's not me. I'm not the dumbbell. This is a thing. Oh my God. I can't tell you how much that made me happy. And I will say this, people who haven't, if you know that you have some of these issues, read up on them. And when you, and as Myles said, you're absolutely not alone. And it's so helpful to see what do other people do. And just to know this is something that is not going to, it absolutely has not held me back at all. It doesn't have to hold you back at all. I caught myself the next day about 8 different times, not being able to do something and hearing my brother's voice, which is where that negative voice came from, saying stupid. I went, wait a second, this isn't stupid. This is just something that I can't do. I mean, it's like 8 different releases even the next day. And I thought to myself, I've been beating myself up on this 8 times a day all my life, and I'm old.
There is no shame asking for accommodations. There is no shame seeking out technology that you need. Your brain just functions differently. Seek out the tools that you need to be successful. And like you said, focus on what you are good at. Maybe even get ahead of the narrative too. If you are going into job interviews, if you are going into education, know what you need to be successful, know where you are successful, and know how to guide that so that you take control of your life. Because a lot of people get caught in this trap where other people tell their narrative for them. And that's where people are told you're stupid from a young age. And that's so dangerous. That is so dangerous to so many people that are young.
What I had to do was undo all that programming I had. It wasn't, in addition to not knowing a lot of stuff, most of the stuff I learned was wrong and limited me on the note that you said. And pretty much this is how I've lived my life. As soon as I see someone who's doing something and I go, ooh, what's that? Let me find out how to do that me too. And I've lived my life that way, including when I see people who are happier. When you've noticed 3 times, you said your positive attitude, your positive, honey, that I have worked on. Granted, I was born kind of optimistic, so that's a plus. However, it doesn't matter. Your brain is plastic until the day you die. You can really adjust it. This is a little piece of advice for everyone listening. When you're talking to anyone, try very quickly to make it into a conversation, as opposed to they're going to ask and back. One thing I do almost always is when I first meet people, I find one thing about them that I like. Either they're wearing something, or they brought the best food, or they cleaned up before we all sat down. I mean, everyone, even the most despicable people, have something quality, and I always start off with acknowledging them for something that I just noticed. And that seems to bring it down from a, well, who are you, formal, to, oh, you're a human. I mean, it's almost magical. I do suggest that to everyone.
Well, thank you, Reesa. I really appreciate the conversation today. You brought so much insights into folks with neurodiversity, your particular experiences, how job seekers can kind of pick themselves up again. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I wanted to ask, how can people find you online?
I'm remarkably easy to find. Here's my email. So Woolf is like Virginia Woolf, and the company name is Confident with a T, Confident Speaking. If you want to call and or do a Zoom call, if you're afraid of public speaking, I'll tell you what things to work on. I'm not going to give you a sales thing. Listen, there's nothing like holding out your hand to brothers and sisters who have the same thing going on as you and helping each other. Everyone can turn on their best self, and they can also turn on their worst self. And before you speak at any meeting, it doesn't matter how you feel inside. You turn on your best self, because the show must go on. I would say that that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I could give everybody.
I think that's such a great note to end on. Reesa, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your own story with Dyscalculia. And this has been Myles from Peak Performers. We'll see you next time.